Keep your mouth shut or you're done. Gideon Voss's voice sliced through the dim living room, a blade of menace. His muscular frame, six-pack rippling under a tight shirt, loomed over Thalia Warwick, an 8-year-old girl, her small body pinned against the couch. His hand clamped her neck, fingers digging into her trembling skin, her eyes wide, red-rimmed, screaming fear without a sound. Isolde Warwick, 42, a striking white mother, slipped through the front door, her fitted white dress clinging to her frame, blonde hair pulled tight in a bun. Her jaw clenched till it ached as she froze behind a wall, heart pounding like a war drum. Gideon's sneer twisted, his grip tightening, oblivious to Isolde's presence. "You think your mom will believe you over me?" he spat, cutting off Thalia's whimper. Isolde's fist balled, nails biting her palm, rage surging through her veins. She'd trusted Gideon, the charming gym trainer who'd won over Willow Creek's neighbors, but now his mask was off. Thalia's tiny hands clutched her sweater, her breath shallow, defiance flickering in her gaze despite the terror. Gideon's prejudice, that a child's word meant nothing, fueled his brazen act, his power as stepdad wielded like a club. Isolde's chest burned, her mind racing. How long had he been doing this? The room's shadows seemed to pulse, amplifying her horror. She stepped forward, ready to scream, but stopped, her silence a calculated shield to protect Thalia. Gideon's grip slackened slightly, his eyes darting, sensing a shift. Isolde's breath hitched, her resolve hardening like steel. This wasn't just a moment. It was a war declared. Thalia's single tear hit the floor, a silent vow that this injustice wouldn't stand. Thalia's eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Gideon's, her small chest heaving under his grip. "You're not my real dad," she hissed, her voice a fragile blade, slicing through the suffocating air. Gideon's fingers twitched, his sneer faltering for a split second, caught off guard by her defiance. Isolde Warwick, still hidden behind the wall, her white dress stark against the shadows, felt her heart slam against her ribs. Her fist shook like a live wire, rage and fear coiling into a molten core. She stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood, shattering the silence. "Gideon, stop!" Her voice cut like a whip, low but lethal, every syllable a mother's shield. Gideon's hand dropped, his eyes narrowing, but he didn't speak. Thalia's words had already landed their blow. Thalia, trembling, clutched her sweater tighter, her gaze never leaving Gideon, a silent vow burning in her stare. Isolde moved closer, her body a barrier, her jaw clenched till it ached. "Go to your room, Thalia," she ordered, her tone steady, masking the storm inside. Thalia hesitated, her small frame rigid, then bolted upstairs, her footsteps a frantic drumbeat. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Isolde faced Gideon, her eyes blazing, daring him to challenge her. "Leave, now!" Her words were daggers, each one precise. No room for his charm to slither through. Gideon's lips curled, a half smirk, but his shoulders tensed, betraying a crack in his control. He grabbed his jacket, brushing past her, his bulk a deliberate threat. The front door clicked shut, leaving a heavy silence. Isolde's knees buckled, but she caught herself, her hand gripping the wall. Upstairs, Thalia's locked door hid her courage, a prophecy of resistance that Gideon couldn't erase. Isolde's breath steadied, her resolve hardening like iron. This wasn't the end. It was the spark of a fight she'd never back down from. Gideon Voss stormed into his Willow Creek gym, his six-pack taut under a sweat-soaked shirt, his jaw tight as a coiled spring. Thalia's words, "You're not my real dad," burned in his skull, her defiant stare a splinter he couldn't pull out. He slung his gym bag onto the bench, but a folded paper slipped free, fluttering to the floor. He froze. It was Thalia's sketch, slipped in by her trembling hands. A dark, jagged figure, with his face, eyes like voids, looming over a small girl. His pulse hammered like a jackhammer, a crack in his smug control. "Damn, kid," he muttered, crumpling the paper, but his fingers shook, betraying a flicker of doubt. Had she told Isolde? He shoved the sketch into his pocket, his sneer faltering as he scanned the empty gym, half expecting her eyes in the shadows. Meanwhile, Isolde Warwick, her white dress creased from gripping the wall, slipped into Thalia's room. The 8-year-old sat curled on her bed, clutching her sketchbook like a shield. Isolde's heart clenched, her knees hitting the floor beside her daughter. "Thalia, talk to me," she urged, voice sharp but soft, a mother's blade honed by guilt. Thalia's fingers, small and unsteady, opened the sketchbook to a hidden note. "He scares me when you're gone." The words sliced through Isolde, her breath catching, rage and regret colliding like a storm. She'd trusted Gideon, let his charm blind her. But Thalia's note was a flare in the dark, a mysterious clue screaming his menace. Isolde's hand gripped the note, her nails biting her palm, her resolve igniting like a fuse. Gideon, alone in the gym, stared at the crumpled sketch, his confidence fracturing. Thalia's defiance wasn't just a child's rebellion, it was a mirror reflecting his lies. Isolde, clutching the note, stood, her eyes steel, knowing this was only the beginning. The house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next move. "You think you can outsmart me, kid?" Gideon Voss snarled, his six-pack flexing as he leaned against his truck outside Thalia Warwick's school in Willow Creek, Ohio. His eyes, sharp as knives, scanned the playground, locking onto Thalia's small figure clutching her sketchbook. Her words, "You're not my real dad," still stung, a splinter in his mind, and that crumpled sketch of his menacing face burned a hole in his pocket. His pulse slammed like a fist, doubt creeping in, but he shoved it down, his smirk a mask of control. He'd charm his way back into Isolde's trust, silence Thalia's defiance. He stepped forward, offering a ride, his voice honeyed but edged. "Get in, Thalia. Your mom's waiting." Thalia froze, her small hands gripping her bag, her eyes darting for an escape. She shook her head, backing away, her silence a blade cutting through his facade. Gideon's jaw tightened, his fingers twitching, but a teacher's glance forced him to retreat, his truck peeling out with a screech. Across town, Isolde Warwick's hands shook as she clutched Thalia's note. "He scares me when you're gone." Her white dress creased from pacing her classroom after hours. Her blonde bun, sleek and tight, mirrored her resolve, but her chest burned with guilt for trusting Gideon. Her nails dug into her palms, rage coiling like a spring. She'd failed Thalia, ignored her withdrawal, but no more. She grabbed her phone, dialing Marin Quill, her librarian friend, her voice a low hiss. "Gideon's after her. I need your help." Marin, sharp and unflinching, met Isolde at the library, her eyes narrowing at the note. "He's not what he seems," Marin said, her words slicing through Isolde's doubt. She'd heard whispers about Gideon's past, a hushed-up incident at his old gym. Isolde's heart pounded, her mind racing. What else had he hidden? She drove to Thalia's school, her eyes scanning the lot, spotting Gideon's truck tracks in the dirt. Her breath caught, fury surging like a wildfire. She parked, slipping out, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement, and caught sight of Thalia sprinting from the playground, her small frame trembling but defiant. "Thalia!" Isolde's shout was a spear, piercing the air. Thalia ran to her, collapsing into her arms, her sketchbook falling open to a new drawing. Gideon's truck, a dark shape lurking. Isolde's grip tightened, her resolve a steel blade. She'd protect Thalia, no matter the cost. Gideon, back at his gym, paced like a caged beast, the sketch haunting him. He'd underestimated Thalia's courage, Isolde's suspicion. His fingers crushed a water bottle, plastic cracking under his grip. He needed to control the narrative, keep Isolde in the dark. He texted her, his tone smooth. "Just checking on Thalia. Everything okay?" Isolde's phone buzzed in her hand, her eyes narrowing at his lie. She didn't respond, her silence a calculated strike. She drove Thalia home, her daughter's small hand clutching hers, fear etched in her wide eyes. At home, Isolde searched Thalia's sketchbook, finding another clue. A sketch of Gideon at a community barbecue, his smile too wide, eyes locked on Thalia. Her stomach twisted, guilt and rage colliding like a storm. She'd let him into their lives, believed his charm. Marin arrived, her voice cutting. "Check his past. He's done this before." Isolde nodded, her jaw clenched till it ached, her fingers tracing the sketch. She slipped out to the garage, finding Gideon's gym bag, left behind after their confrontation. Inside, a crumpled receipt from a diner near his old gym caught her eye. A name scribbled on it. Victor Klein. Her pulse spiked, a new lead igniting her search. Who was Victor? And what did he know? Gideon, sensing the noose tightening, stared at his phone. Isolde's silence louder than any accusation. His fingers hovered over a text to Victor, his mentor, hesitating. Thalia's sketch was a warning, her courage a crack in his armor. Isolde's search was just beginning, and the truth was closer than he thought. Her white dress flashed in his mind, a beacon of defiance he couldn't ignore. Draw what you feel, not what you fear, Thalia Warwick whispered, her small voice steady as she leaned over a younger girl's sketch at the Willow Creek Community Center. Her 8-year-old hands, still trembling from Gideon's threats, guided the pencil, sketching a bright house with open windows. Her eyes, once red with fear, now burned with quiet defiance, a spark that refused to flicker out. She pushed her sketchbook aside, hiding the dark figure of Gideon, her stepdad, that haunted its pages. Across town, Isolde Warwick, her blonde hair still in a tight bun, her white dress creased from pacing, stormed into her classroom, her heels clicking like gunfire. "I let him in," she hissed to herself, her fists knotted like iron, guilt slashing through her chest. She'd trusted Gideon, his six-pack charm blinding her to Thalia's fear. Her jaw clenched till it ached, but Thalia's courage, those sketches, that note, lit a fire in her gut. She grabbed a stack of graded papers, her fingers flipping to a blank page where she scrawled Victor Klein's name, the receipt's clue searing her mind. Who was he, and what did he hide? At the community center, Thalia's pencil danced, helping little Mia draw a tree, her small laugh a blade cutting through her fear. A teacher, Miss Harper, watched, her eyes soft but sharp. "You're a natural, Thalia," she said, her voice a warm blade. Thalia's cheeks flushed, but her fingers tightened on the pencil, her resolve a quiet storm. She glanced at her sketchbook, the hidden drawing of Gideon's truck, a secret she guarded. Back at school, Isolde's hands shook as she dialed Maren Quill, her librarian friend. "Victor Klein, find anything," she snapped, her voice a whip, no room for doubt. Maren, hunched over library records, uncovered a name. Klein, a gym owner tied to Gideon's old workplace. Isolde's pulse slammed like a fist, her mind racing. Klein was the key. She drove to the center, her white dress catching eyes, her face a mask of steel. Thalia ran to her, her small arms wrapping tight, her sketchbook clutched like a shield. "I helped Mia today," Thalia said, her voice small but proud, a flicker of hope in her eyes. Isolde's heart twisted, her hand brushing Thalia's hair, her resolve hardening like a blade forged in fire. Thalia led Isolde to her art table, showing a sketch of their home. Windows glowing, no shadows. "This is us," Thalia said, her finger tracing the lines, her courage a beacon. Isolde's eyes burned, her guilt colliding with pride. She'd failed to see Gideon's menace, but Thalia's strength was her anchor. "You're so brave," Isolde whispered, her voice cracking, her hand gripping Thalia's shoulder. Miss Harper approached, her gaze sharp. "She's been helping others, even now," she said, nodding at Thalia's sketches. Isolde's chest tightened, her mind flashing to Gideon's truck, his grip on Thalia's neck. She wouldn't let him win. Back at the library, Maren handed Isolde a printout, an old article mentioning Klein's gym and a hushed-up incident. "It's him," Maren said, her voice cutting like a scalpel. Isolde's fingers crushed the paper, her rage a wildfire. She drove home, Thalia beside her, the sketchbook open to a new drawing, a figure shielding a girl from a shadow. Isolde's breath caught, her eyes locking on Thalia's. "We'll stop him," she vowed, her voice a low growl, every word a hammer strike. At home, Isolde tucked Thalia in, her small room a fortress of sketches and hope. Thalia's eyes, heavy but fierce, met hers. "He can't scare me forever," she murmured, her voice a spark in the dark. Isolde's hand tightened on the bed frame, her resolve a steel wall. She slipped into the kitchen, pulling the receipt from Gideon's bag. Victor Klein's name glaring like a warning. Her phone buzzed, Gideon's text. "Everything okay with Thalia?" His lies cut like glass, but Isolde's silence was a blade, sharp and ready. She scrawled Klein's name again, her pen digging into the paper, her mind mapping the fight ahead. Thalia's courage, her sketches, her quiet strength, they were the fuel for Isolde's fire. Gideon's doubt, sparked by that haunting sketch, was her weapon. The truth was out there, and she'd tear it free no matter the cost. Her white dress, still creased, hung like a flag of defiance, ready for the war to come. "You think you can judge me?" Gideon Voss snapped, his six-pack flexing as he loomed in the doorway of their Willow Creek home, his voice a jagged blade. Isolde Warwick, her white dress taut against her frame, blonde hair pulled tight in a bun, stood firm in the kitchen. Her eyes blazed like a furnace. Her fingers gripped the counter, nails biting into the wood, the article about Victor Klein's gym cover-up burning in her pocket. "I saw you, Gideon," she hissed, her words sharp as a scalpel. "You hurt Thalia." Gideon's smirk twisted, his hand slamming the doorframe, cutting off her accusation. "Discipline Isolde. She needs it," he barked, his tone dripping venom. No room for her to counter. Thalia ate, huddled upstairs, her small hands clutching her sketchbook, overhearing every word. Her heart pounded, but her eyes sparked with defiance, the memory of Gideon's grip on her neck a raw wound. Isolde's jaw clenched till it ached, rage coiling like a spring. "You don't touch her!" she spat, stepping forward, her voice a steel whip. Gideon laughed, a cold, jagged sound, but his eyes flickered, betraying a crack in his armor. "I'm sorry if I scared her," he said, his tone shifting to fake warmth, his hands raised in mock surrender. "Let's fix this, babe." Isolde's pulse slammed like a hammer, her mind screaming lies. She wouldn't fall for his charm again. "Stay away from her," she shot back, her words daggers, each one aimed at his facade. "Prove you're not a monster, or we're done." Gideon's smirk faded, his shoulders tensing, but he nodded, his eyes narrowing like a predator sizing up prey. "Fine," he muttered, brushing past her, his bulk a deliberate threat as he grabbed his keys and left. The door's slam echoed like a gunshot. Thalia crept downstairs, her small frame trembling, her sketchbook clutched tight. "Mom," she whispered, her voice a fragile spark, slipping a folded letter into Isolde's hand. Isolde's fingers shook, unfolding it, her breath catching. The letter, in Thalia's shaky scrawl, read, "He said I'd lose you if I told a secret." Isolde's chest burned, her eyes locking on Thalia's, guilt and fury colliding like a storm. The secret. What was it? Her mind flashed to Victor Klein, the gym owner, the article hinting at buried complaints. This was bigger than Gideon's threats. Isolde knelt, pulling Thalia close, her hand stroking her daughter's hair, her resolve hardening like iron. "You're safe now," she vowed, her voice low, a mother's shield forged in rage. Thalia's eyes, wide but fierce, nodded, her small hand gripping Isolde's. "He said it's his game," Thalia murmured, her words aflare in the dark, pointing to a hidden truth. Isolde's heart twisted, her fingers crushing the letter, her mind racing. She stood, her white dress a beacon of defiance, and grabbed her phone, texting Marin Quill. "Found Thalia's letter. It's worse than we thought." Marin's reply buzzed instantly. "Meet me now. Library." Isolde's heels clicked sharply as she led Thalia to the car, her eyes scanning the street, Gideon's truck a shadow in her mind. At the library, Marin handed her a faded document, a complaint against Gideon, buried by Klein. Isolde's pulse spiked, her hand gripping the paper, the letter's secret taking shape. "He's done this before," Marin said, her voice cutting like glass. Isolde's eyes burned, her resolve a wildfire. Thalia beside her opened her sketchbook, revealing a new drawing, Gideon and a faceless man, a gym in the background. "That's his friend," Thalia whispered, her voice a blade, slicing through Isolde's doubt. Isolde's fist clenched, her nails biting her palm, the letter and drawing a twin spark igniting her fight. Gideon's apology was a lie, his game a predator's trap. She wouldn't let him win. Marin's eyes met hers, a silent pact. "We'll end this," Isolde said, her voice a low growl, every word a hammer strike. Thalia's hand squeezed hers, her courage a beacon in the dark. The library's silence pulsed, heavy with the weight of their discovery. Isolde's white dress, creased but unyielding, stood as a flag of war. Gideon's fake apology had failed, and the truth was clawing free. A new fight loomed, and Isolde was ready, her daughter's letter a weapon she'd wield without mercy. "Drop this now, or you'll lose everything," Victor Klein growled, his voice a jagged shard, slicing through the quiet of the Willow Creek diner. His broad frame, clad in a tailored suit, leaned across the table, his eyes cold as steel, pinning Isolde Warwick. Her white dress hugged her form, blonde hair tight in a bun, but her fists clenched like iron, nails biting her palms. Thalia's letter. "He said I'd lose you if I told his secret," burned in her mind. Gideon's threats, a raw wound. Victor, Gideon's mentor and gym owner, loomed as a new threat, his influence shielding Gideon's past. "You're digging where you shouldn't," he snapped, cutting off Isolde's sharp intake of breath. "Gideon's a good man. You're just a paranoid mother." His words stung, a deliberate jab at her protective instinct, but her eyes burned like coals, rage surging through her veins. She'd uncovered the article about Victor's cover-up of Gideon's misconduct, and now his hostility bore a larger conspiracy. "You hid his crimes," Isolde shot back, her voice a blade, slicing through his smirk. Victor's hand slammed the table, coffee cups rattling, silencing her next words. "You've got no proof," he hissed, his bulk shifting, a predator's stance. Isolde's pulse pounded like a war drum, her jaw clenched till it ached. She wouldn't flinch. "I have Thalia's letter," she said, her words sharp as daggers, each one aimed at his facade. Victor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease betraying his control. "Kids lie," he spat, leaning closer, his breath hot. "Keep pushing, and you'll regret it." The threat landed like a fist, but Isolde's resolve held, a steel wall forged by Thalia's fear. She stood, her heels clicking sharp on the diner floor, her white dress a defiant flag. "You don't scare me," she said, her voice low, a mother's vow cutting through his bluster. Victor's smirk twisted, but his fingers twitched, a crack in his armor. As Isolde turned to leave, her hand brushed her pocket, feeling the crumpled article and Thalia's letter. Twin sparks of truth. She'd face Victor's power, no matter the cost. Back home, Thalia, 8, sat curled on her bed, her sketchbook open to a new drawing, a faceless man in a suit, looming over a gym. Her small hands trembled, but her eyes sparked with defiance, the memory of Gideon's grip on her neck a lingering shadow. Isolde entered, her heart twisting at Thalia's hunched form. "Who's this?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp, pointing at the sketch. Thalia's gaze met hers, fierce despite her fear. "Gideon's friend," she whispered, her words a flare in the dark, pointing to Victor. Isolde's chest burned, her hand gripping the sketchbook, rage and resolve colliding like a storm. Victor's threat at the diner wasn't just about Gideon. It was a shield for a deeper scheme, a network protecting predators. She knelt beside Thalia, her hands stroking her daughter's hair, her eyes blazing with purpose. "We'll stop them," she vowed, her voice a low growl, every word a hammer strike. Thalia's small hand squeezed hers, her courage a beacon. Isolde's phone buzzed. Marin Quill's text. "Found more on Klein." Her pulse spiked, the conspiracy unraveling. Victor's hostility had lit a fuse, and Isolde was ready to ignite it. The fight was no longer just about Gideon. It was about dismantling a hidden empire of lies. "You're digging your own grave," Victor Klein's voice hissed through the phone, a venomous blade slicing into Isolde Warwick's ear. She stood in the Willow Creek Library, her white dress taut, blonde hair in a tight bun. Her fists shook like live wires as she clutched Thalia's letter. "He said I'd lose you if I told his secret." Her jaw clenched till it ached, rage a wildfire in her chest. "Threaten me again, and you'll regret it," she snapped, her words sharp as a guillotine, cutting off Victor's retort. She slammed the phone down, the bang echoing like a gunshot. Marin Quill, her librarian friend, leaned over a table strewn with files, her eyes sharp as scalpels. "Found it," Marin said, shoving a faded complaint into Isolde's hands. A report of Gideon Voss's inappropriate conduct with a teen at Victor's old gym, buried by his influence. Isolde's pulse pounded like a war drum, her fingers crushing the paper, the secret taking shape. Gideon wasn't just a predator. Victor was his shield. She'd tear it down. Isolde's heels clicked like gunfire as she stormed to her car, Talia's sketchbook tucked under her arm, the drawing of Victor and Gideon burning in her mind. At home, Talia, 8, sat curled on the couch, her small hands sketching a new image. A girl shielding her home from shadows. Her eyes, wide but fierce, met Isolde's. "He's watching me," Talia whispered, her voice a fragile spark, pointing to a sketch of Gideon's truck outside her school. Isolde's chest tightened, her hand gripping Talia's shoulder, resolve a steel blade. "Not anymore," she vowed, her voice a low growl, every word a hammer strike. She grabbed her phone, snapping photos of Talia's sketches, each one a flare in the dark. Marin arrived, her arms full of records, her voice cutting. "Klein's gym has more complaints, all silenced." Isolde's eyes blazed like coals, her fingers flipping through the files, landing on a name. Lena Holt, a former gym employee. "Find her," Isolde said, her tone a whip, no room for hesitation. They tracked Lena to a diner across town, her face worn, eyes darting like a hunted animal. Isolde slid into the booth, her white dress a stark contrast to the dim light, her bun a crown of defiance. "Tell me about Gideon," she demanded, her words daggers cutting through Lena's silence. "He threatened me," Lena muttered, her voice trembling, but Isolde leaned closer, her eyes burning. "He's hurting my daughter. Speak." Lena's hands shook, pulling out a USB drive. Voicemail, Gideon's voice. "He scared kids and Victor covered it up." Isolde's pulse spiked, her hands snatching the drive, rage and hope colliding like a storm. She played it, Gideon's voice snarling. "Keep quiet, or you're out." Her heart slammed against her ribs, the truth a blade slicing through lies. Lena's eyes met hers, a flicker of courage. "There's more. Check Klein's office," she whispered, slipping Isolde a key card. Isolde drove to Victor's gym, her white dress catching eyes, her bun tight as her resolve. Marin stayed with Thalia, guarding her like a sentinel. Inside, the gym reeked of sweat, but Isolde's focus was razor sharp. She slipped into Klein's office, the keycard clicking the lock open. Her hands rifled through drawers, her pulse hammering like a jackhammer, finding a hidden folder. More complaints, names of kids, all buried. Her fingers crushed the papers, her rage a wildfire. A photo fell out. Gideon and Victor, grinning. A girl in the background, her face blurred but terrified. Isolde's breath caught, her mind flashing to Talia's sketches. She snapped pictures, her phone a weapon, each click a step toward justice. A noise, footsteps, made her freeze, her hand gripping the folder, her eyes darting to the door. Victor's shadow loomed, his voice a low hiss. "You shouldn't be here." Isolde's jaw clenched, her body tensing like a coiled spring, ready to bolt. She slipped out a side door, her heels silent, her white dress a ghost in the dark. At home, Thalia ran to her, her small arms wrapping tight, her sketchbook open to a new drawing. A woman in white fighting a shadow. "That's you," Thalia said, her voice a spark, her courage a beacon. Isolde's heart twisted, her hands stroking Thalia's hair, her resolve ironclad. She texted Marin the photos, her fingers flying. "Got proof. Klein's next." Marin's reply buzzed, "Meet Bryce, now." Isolde's eyes burned, the folder and USB drive heavy in her bag, the truth clawing free. Victor's threat echoed, but her rage drowned it out. Thalia's sketches, Lena's voicemail, the hidden complaints, they were her arsenal. The conspiracy was unraveling, and Isolde was the blade cutting through its heart. Her white dress, creased but unyielding, stood as a flag of war, ready for the fight to come. "You can't stop what's already buried," Victor Klein snarled, his voice a jagged shard slicing through the phone. Isolde Warwick, her white dress creased, blonde hair tight in a bun, stood in her Willow Creek kitchen, her eyes flaring like a torch. Her fingers crushed the folder from Victor's office. Complaints and a photo. Gideon and Victor grinning, a terrified girl blurred in the background, searing her mind. "You hid his crimes," she spat, her words a guillotine, cutting off Victor's smug retort. Her pulse pounded like a war drum, rage and dread colliding like a storm. She'd uncovered the truth. Gideon Voss, her six-pack stepdad husband, wasn't just a predator. Victor, his gym owner mentor, had buried his past, silencing complaints of inappropriate conduct with kids for years. The photo, the voicemail, Thalia's letter, they screamed a conspiracy. Isolde's jaw clenched till it ached, her resolve a steel blade forged in fury. She slammed the folder down, the thud echoing like a gunshot. Thalia ate, peeked from the hallway, her small hands clutching her sketchbook, eyes wide but fierce. "Is it him?" she whispered, her voice a spark, pointing to the photo's blurred girl. Isolde's heart twisted, her hand gripping Thalia's shoulder, guilt slashing her chest. "Yes," she said, her voice a low growl, every word a hammer strike. She knelt, eyes locking with Thalia's. He hurt others, too. Thalia's fingers shook, flipping to a sketch mirroring the photo. Gideon looming, a faceless girl cowering. Isolde's breath caught, her rage a wildfire. Victor's influence had shielded Gideon's pattern, targeting vulnerable kids, using his charm to dodge accountability. The complaints listed names, dates, all suppressed by Victor's connections to a local councilman. Isolde's fists balled, nails biting her palms, her mind racing. How many had suffered? Marin Quill burst in, her eyes sharp as scalpels, clutching a USB drive. "Lena sent this," she said, her voice cutting like glass. "More voicemails. Victor's orders." Isolde plugged it in, Gideon's voice snarling. "Bury it, or we're done." Victor's reply followed. "No one will believe kids." Her pulse spiked, her hand crushing the drive, the truth a blade slicing through lies. Marin's gaze met hers, a silent pact. "They protected each other," Isolde hissed, her words daggers, aimed at the conspiracy. Thalia's sketchbook fell open, a new drawing, a woman in white breaking chains. "That's you," Thalia said, her voice a flare, her courage a beacon. Isolde's eyes burned, her resolve ironclad. Victor's network wasn't just a cover-up, it was a machine, silencing victims to protect predators like Gideon. She grabbed her phone, texting Elton Bryce, the detective. "Proof! Now!" Her fingers flew, each tap a step toward justice. Isolde stood, her white dress a defiant flag, her bun a crown of purpose. The complaints, voicemails, and Thalia's sketches were her arsenal, exposing a betrayal deeper than she'd imagined. Victor's threat echoed, but her rage drowned it out. Thalia's small hand squeezed hers, her defiance a spark igniting Isolde's fight. The truth was out, and it would burn everything down. Isolde's eyes locked on the photo, the blurred girl a ghost demanding justice. The war wasn't just for Thalia. It was for every child Gideon and Victor had silenced. Her heart pounded, a drumbeat of vengeance, ready to shatter their empire of lies. "You'll never pin this on me," Gideon Voss snarled, his six-pack rippling as he cornered Thalia Warwick in their Willow Creek home, his hand clamping her shoulder like a vice. The 8-year-old's eyes, wide with terror, darted to the hallway, her small frame trembling under his grip. "You talk, you lose her," he hissed, his voice a jagged blade, cutting off her whimper. Isolde Warwick, her white dress taut, blonde hair tight in a bun, crouched behind the living room wall, her phone recording, its red light a silent pulse. Her jaw clenched till it ached, rage a wildfire in her chest. The complaints, voicemail, and Thalia's sketches, proof of Gideon's predatory past, burning in her mind. Her pulse slammed like a piston, but she held still, her resolve a steel blade. Victor Klein's shadow loomed at the door, his suit crisp, his voice a low growl. "End this, Isolde, or you're finished." His words sliced through her, a threat backed by his gym owner influence, shielding Gideon's crimes. Isolde's fists balled, nails biting her palms, her eyes blazing like a furnace. "You're done protecting him," she spat, stepping out, her voice a guillotine, cutting off Victor's sneer. Gideon's grip tightened on Thalia, his eyes narrowing, a predator cornered. "She's lying," he barked, shoving Thalia back, her small body stumbling, her sketchbook hitting the floor. Isolde lunged, her body a shield, her arms wrapping Thalia, her white dress a defiant flag. "Get away from her," she roared, her words daggers. each one aimed at Gideon's facade. Victor stepped closer, his bulk blocking the exit, his voice cold. "You've got no proof." Isolde's heart pounded like a war drum, her hand gripping her phone, the recording still running. "I have everything," she hissed, her tone sharp as a blade, daring him to strike. Gideon's smirk twisted, his hand twitching, but Victor's glare held him back. "Walk away or you lose your job. You're home," Victor snapped, cutting off her response. Isolde's chest burned, her resolve ironclad. "Threaten us again, and you're exposed," she shot back, her voice a whip, each word a hammer strike. Thalia, clutching Isolde's arm, her eyes fierce despite her fear, whispered, "He's scared, Mom." Her words, a spark in the dark, ignited Isolde's fury. She pushed Thalia behind her body a fortress, her eyes locking on Victor's. "You can't hide this," she said, her voice low, a mother's vow slicing through their bluster. Gideon's fingers flexed, his control fracturing, but Victor grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the door. "This isn't over," Victor hissed, his eyes cold as steel, a promise of retaliation. The door slammed, the sound a gunshot echoing in the silence. Isolde's knees buckled, her hand gripping Thalia's, her phone heavy with the recording. Her breath caught, rage and fear colliding like a storm. Thalia's sketchbook lay open, a drawing of a woman in white breaking chains, her courage a beacon. Isolde's eyes burned, her resolve a wildfire. She texted Marin Quill, her fingers flying, "Got him on video. Meet me." Marin's reply buzzed, "Bryce is ready." Isolde knelt, pulling Thalia close, her hands stroking her daughter's hair. "You're so brave," she whispered, her voice cracking, her heart twisting with pride. Thalia's eyes, wide but defiant, met hers. "He can't win," she murmured, her voice a flare, cutting through the dark. Isolde's fist clenched, her nails biting her palm, the recording a weapon in her hand. Victor's threat loomed, but her rage drowned it out. Gideon's grip on Thalia, Victor's cover-up. They were a house of lies, and she'd burn it down. Her white dress, creased but unyielding, stood as a flag of war. The danger was real, but so was her fight. Thalia's hand squeezed hers, a silent pact. The truth was clawing free, and Isolde was ready to wield it like a blade. "You can't hide forever," Isolde Warwick hissed, her voice a razor cutting through the silence of her Willow Creek home. Her white dress clung to her frame, blonde hair tight in a bun, her eyes blazed like a furnace as she clutched her phone. The video of Gideon Voss threatening Thalia still burning in her grip. Her pulse hammered like a jackhammer, rage and resolve a wildfire in her chest. Gideon's words, "You talk, you lose her," and Victor Klein's threat, "End this or you're finished," echoed, but Isolde's jaw clenched till it ached, her fists knotted like iron. She'd escaped their confrontation, the recording a blade in her hand, but it wasn't enough. She needed proof that couldn't be buried. Her heels clicked sharply as she stormed to the kitchen. Thalia's sketchbook opened to the drawing of Gideon and Victor, a girl cowering in the background. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Thalia's courage is her anchor. Marin Quill burst through the door, her eyes sharp as scalpels, a USB drive in her hand. "Lena's got more," she snapped, her voice a whip, shoving the drive into Isolde's palm. Isolde plugged it in, her fingers trembling, Gideon's voice snarling through the speakers. "Bury the complaints, Victor, or we're done." Victor's reply followed. "No kid's word holds up." Isolde's breath caught, her nails biting her palms, the truth a guillotine slicing through their lies. Thalia ate, crept downstairs, her small hands clutching her sweater, eyes wide but fierce. "That's him," she whispered, her voice a spark, pointing to the sketchbook's drawing of Victor's gym. Isolde knelt, her hand gripping Thalia's shoulder, her resolve a steel wall. "You're so brave," she said, her voice a low growl, every word a hammer strike. Thalia's eyes sparked, her courage aflare in the dark, pushing Isolde forward. Isolde grabbed her phone, texting Elton Bryce, the detective. "Meet us. Evidence." Her fingers flew, each tap a step toward justice. Marin nodded, her gaze cutting like glass. "Lena's waiting," she said, her voice a blade. They drove to a diner, Isolde's white dress catching eyes, her bun a crown of defiance. Lena Holt, the former gym employee, sat hunched, her face worn, eyes darting like a hunted animal. More complaints, Lena muttered, sliding a folder across the table, her hands shaking. Isolde's pulse spiked, her fingers ripping it open. Names, dates, kids silenced by Victor's influence. Her chest burned, rage a wildfire. "Why'd you keep this?" she demanded, her words daggers, cutting through Lena's fear. "I was scared," Lena whispered, her voice cracking. "But not anymore." Isolde's eyes burned, her hand crushing the folder, the truth a weapon forging in her grip. They sped to Elton's precinct, Isolde's heels clicking like gunfire, Thalia beside her, clutching her sketchbook. Elton, gruff but sharp, leaned over his desk, his eyes narrowing at the video, voicemail, and complaints. "This is big," he said, his voice a low rumble, flipping through the folder. Isolde's heart pounded like a war drum, her resolve ironclad. "Gideon hurt her," she said, her voice a whip, pointing to Thalia. Talia's small hand trembled, but she stepped forward, her voice aflare. "He said I'd lose Mom." Elton's jaw tightened, his pen scratching notes, each word a nail in Gideon's coffin. Isolde handed over the USB, her fingers steady, the recording a blade sharpened by Thalia's courage. Marin added the article, her voice cutting. Victor buried it all. Elton's eyes met Isolde's, a silent pact. "We've got enough," he said, his tone a hammer strike. Isolde's white dress, creased but unyielding, stood as a flag of war. She grabbed Thalia's hand, her pulse slamming like a piston. The evidence, video, voicemail, complaints, sketches, an arsenal no one could deny. Thalia's eyes, fierce despite her fear, locked onto hers. "He can't hurt me now," she whispered, her voice a spark igniting Isolde's fight. Marin's hand gripped Isolde's shoulder, her resolve a steel blade. "We end this," Isolde said, her voice a low growl, every word a guillotine. The precinct's hum faded, the weight of their evidence a ticking bomb. Gideon and Victor's empire of lies was crumbling, and Isolde was the blade to finish it. Thalia's sketchbook, open to the woman in white breaking chains, was a vow they'd keep. The final fight loomed, and Isolde's heart burned, ready to strike. "Your lies end now?" Isolde Warwick snarled, her voice a guillotine slicing through the Willow Creek Town Hall's murmur. Her white dress clung to her frame, blonde hair tight in a bun. Her eyes burned like a torch as she stood at the podium, gripping her phone. The video of Gideon Voss, her six-pack stepdad, threatening Thalia played on the screen. His hiss, "You talk! You lose her!" echoing like a gunshot. Her pulse slammed like a piston, rage a wildfire in her chest. Victor Klein, the gym owner, stood in the crowd, his suit crisp, his sneer twisting as he cut in. "She's delusional." His words aimed to silence her, but Isolde's jaw clenched till it ached, her resolve a steel blade. "Play the voicemail," she snapped, her voice a whip, cutting off his bluster. The speakers blared Gideon's snarl. "Bury the complaints, Victor." Gasps rippled through the crowd, neighbors' eyes widening, their trust in Victor shattering. Isolde's fist balled, nails biting her palms, her white dress a defiant flag. Thalia, 8, stood beside her, clutching her sketchbook, her small frame trembling but eyes fierce. "That's him," she whispered, her voice a spark, pointing to her sketch of Gideon and Victor, a girl cowering. Isolde's heart twisted, her hand gripping Thalia's shoulder, pride and fury colliding like a storm. "You hid his crimes," Isolde spat at Victor, her words daggers, each one aimed at his facade. The folder of complaints, names, dates, silenced kids, flashed on the screen, each page a hammer strike. Victor's face paled, his hands twitching, his control fracturing. "Lies," he barked, stepping forward. But Elton Bryce, the detective, blocked him, his badge glinting, his voice a low growl. "You're done." The crowd erupted, murmurs turning to shouts, their faith in Victor's charm crumbling. Isolde's eyes blazed, her phone a weapon, the evidence undeniable. Marin Quill, her librarian friend, stood nearby, her eyes sharp as scalpels, nodding at Isolde. "Show them all," she said, her voice cutting like glass. Isolde displayed Thalia's sketch, the woman in white breaking chains, her daughter's courage a beacon. "This is the truth," Isolde declared, her voice a hammer, smashing the conspiracy. Gideon in the back froze, his six-pack taut, his smirk gone as Elton slapped cuffs on him, the click echoing like a verdict. Victor lunged, his voice a desperate hiss. "You'll pay for this!" But Isolde's gaze locked on his, her resolve ironclad. "No, you will," she shot back, her words a guillotine, severing his power. The crowd roared, their outrage a tidal wave, washing away the lies. Talia's hand squeezed Isolde's, her eyes sparking with hope. Isolde's white dress, creased but unyielding, stood as a flag of victory. The truth had torn through Gideon and Victor's empire, and the fight wasn't over. It was won. "You're finished, Voss," Elton Bryce growled, his voice a steel blade as he snapped cuffs on Gideon Voss's wrists in the Willow Creek courtroom. Gideon's six-pack tensed, his smirk gone, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Isolde Warwick stood tall, her white dress taut, blonde hair in a tight bun, her eyes blazed like a torch. Her pulse slammed like a piston, rage and relief colliding like a storm. The judge's gavel struck, each bang a hammer nailing Gideon's fate, guilty on all counts. Victor Klein, his gym owner ally, slumped in the gallery, his suit crumpled, his influence shattered as Elton signaled for his investigation. "You covered his crimes," Isolde hissed, her words daggers, cutting through Victor's silence. His jaw twitched, but no retort came. The complaints, voicemail, and Thalia's sketches had buried him. Isolde's fists clenched, nails biting her palms, her resolve a steel wall. Thalia 8 gripped Isolde's hand, her small frame steady, eyes fierce with courage. "He can't hurt me now," she whispered, her voice a spark igniting the room. The crowd, neighbors once swayed by Gideon's charm, nodded, their murmurs a tide of support. Isolde's heart twisted, pride surging as she squeezed Thalia's hand. Elton's badge glinted, his voice sharp. "Case is airtight." The folder of complaints, the video of Gideon's threats, and Thalia's letter had sealed every loose end, mirroring the original's verdict, 45-12. Victor's head bowed, his empire of lies in ruins. Isolde's white dress stood as a flag of victory, her bun a crown of defiance. The courtroom's silence pulsed, heavy with justice won. Thalia's sketchbook, tucked under her arm, held no more shadows, only hope. Isolde's eyes locked on Gideon as he was led away, his defeat a blade she'd sharpened. The fight was over, but the scars remained, a vow to protect Thalia forever etched in her heart. "We failed her, but we'll fix it," Isolde Warwick declared, her voice a steel blade slicing through the Willow Creek Community Center's hum. Her white dress clung to her frame, blonde hair tight in a bun, her eyes flared like a torch as she stood at a makeshift podium, gripping a proposal. Her pulse slammed like a piston, resolving a wildfire in her chest. Gideon Voss's conviction had shattered his lies, and Victor Klein's downfall had cracked Willow Creek's trust. But Isolde wasn't done. Thalia's sketches, her letter, her courage, they demanded more than a verdict. "No child should fear at home," she snapped, her words daggers, cutting through the crowd's murmurs. Her jaw clenched till it ached, the memory of Gideon's grip on Thalia's neck a raw scar. She slammed the proposal down, the thud a hammer strike, announcing a child safety program funded by local donations. Marin Quill, her librarian friend, stood beside her, eyes sharp as scalpels, handing out flyers. "This is for Thalia," Marin said, her voice a whip, igniting the crowd. Neighbors, once swayed by Gideon's charm, nodded, their hands grabbing flyers, their faces etched with guilt. Isolde's heart twisted, pride and pain colliding like a storm. She'd trusted Gideon, ignored Thalia's fear, but now she'd rebuild. "We educate families, train schools," Isolde said, her voice a guillotine, each word a vow to protect. A local businessman, shamed by his past silence, pledged funds, his check a blade cutting through apathy. Isolde's fists balled, nails biting her palms, her resolve ironclad. Thalia, 8, stood nearby, her small hands clutching her sketchbook, eyes fierce with hope. "It's for kids like me," she whispered, her voice a spark, her courage a beacon. Isolde's eyes burned, her hand gripping Thalia's shoulder, a mother's shield forged in fire. At a school assembly, Isolde spoke, her white dress a defiant flag, her bun a crown of purpose. "Trust your kids," she urged, her words sharp as daggers, slicing through the crowd's hesitation. Teachers nodded, parents leaned forward, their silence a pact. Marin projected Talia's sketch, a woman in white breaking chains, onto a screen, the image a flare in the dark. "This is our fight," Isolde said, her voice a low growl, every word a hammer strike. A principal stood, pledging to train staff, her voice cutting like glass. Isolde's pulse spiked, her chest swelling with hope. The program wasn't just for Thalia. It was for every child Gideon and Victor had silenced. She met with community leaders, her heels clicking like gunfire, her proposal a weapon. A councilwoman, once tied to Victor, signed on, her pen scratching a vow to reform. Isolde's eyes flared, her resolve a wildfire. Thalia, at the community center, helped younger kids sketch, her small hands guiding pencils, her laugh a spark igniting hope. Isolde watched, her heart pounding like a war drum, pride drowning out guilt. "You're my hero," she whispered, kneeling beside Thalia, her voice cracking, her hands stroking her daughter's hair. Thalia's eyes sparked, her sketchbook opened to a new drawing, a bright home, no shadows. The crowd clapped, their support a tide lifting Isolde's fight. Marin's hand gripped Isolde's arm, her eyes sharp. "You're changing everything." Isolde nodded, her white dress creased but unyielding, a flag of hope. The program's launch spread, local news buzzing, parents signing up, and their trust was rebuilt. Isolde's phone buzzed, Elton Bryce, the detective, texting, "You did it." Her fingers clenched the phone, her resolve a steel blade. The scars of Gideon's betrayal remained, but Isolde's fight had forged a new shield, protecting Willow Creek's kids. Thalia's laugh echoed, a vow that hope would outlast fear. "We rebuilt this home, not just for us, but for every kid who needs safety," Isolde Warwick declared, her voice a steel blade slicing through the hum of the Willow Creek Community Center. Her white dress hugged her frame, blonde hair tight in a bun, her eyes blazed like a torch as she gripped a paint roller, its wet bristles dripping white. Her pulse slammed like a piston, pride and resolve a wildfire in her chest. Gideon Voss's conviction and Victor Klein's downfall had shattered their lives. But Isolde's child safety program had lit a new flame. Thalia, 8, stood beside her, her small hands clutching a paintbrush, her eyes fierce with hope. "It's our house now," Thalia said, her voice a spark, brushing paint over a wall once shadowed by Gideon's menace. Isolde's jaw clenched till it ached, her heart twisting with pride. "You're my hero," she said, her words daggers, each one a vow to Thalia's courage. The crowd, neighbors, teachers, parents, clapped, their hands a tide of support, their faces etched with newfound trust. Isolde's heels clicked like gunfire as she stepped back, her white dress a defiant flag. She'd trusted Gideon, ignored Thalia's fear, but now she'd rebuilt their world. Thalia's brush danced, painting a mural of a bright home, no shadows, mirroring her sketches of hope. Marin Quill, her librarian friend, joined them, her eyes sharp as scalpels, handing Thalia a new paint can. "You're unstoppable," Marin said, her voice a whip, igniting Thalia's smile. Isolde's chest swelled, her hand gripping Thalia's shoulder, a mother's shield forged in fire. At a school recital, Thalia took the stage, her small fingers flying over the piano keys, notes soaring like a blade through silence. Isolde stood in the crowd, her eyes burning, her resolve ironclad. "She's free," she whispered, her voice cracking, pride drowning out guilt. The audience roared, their applause a hammer strike, celebrating Thalia's courage. A teacher, once swayed by Gideon's charm, hugged Isolde, her words sharp. "You changed us." At home, Isolde and Thalia planted herbs in their front yard, their hands digging into soil, their laughter a spark igniting hope. Marin arrived, her arms full of seedlings, her voice cutting like glass. "This is your legacy." Isolde's pulse spiked, her fingers crushing dirt, her white dress creased but unyielding. The community center's program had spread, parents signing up, schools adopting safety training, and their trust was rebuilt. Elton Bryce, the detective, stopped by, his badge glinting, his voice a low rumble. You saved more than Thalia. Isolde's eyes flared, her hands squeezing Thalia's, the scars of Gideon's betrayal fading. Thalia's sketchbook, open on the porch, showed a new drawing. A woman in white and a girl holding hands, a bright home behind them. That's us, Thalia said, her voice a flare, her courage a beacon. Isolde knelt, her hand stroking Thalia's hair, her heart pounding like a war drum. We're unbreakable, she said, her words a guillotine, severing the past. The community rallied, neighbors bringing herbs, their hands joining Isolde's and Thalia's, their laughter a tide lifting the town. A local reporter filmed the scene, her voice sharp. Willow Creek's hero. Isolde's chest burned, her resolve a wildfire. She'd failed Thalia once, but never again. The program's reach grew, funded by donations, a shield for every child. At a town dinner, Moran raised a glass, her eyes cutting, to truth. Isolde nodded, her white dress a flag of victory, her bun a crown of purpose. Thalia clinked her juice cup, her laugh a spark, her eyes free of fear. Elton shared a story, his voice warm, tying their new family together. The moral lesson burned clear. Truth and courage conquer betrayal, protecting those we love. Subplots resolved, neighbors' trust restored, Marin's loyalty unwavering, Elton's support steadfast. Isolde's phone buzzed, a message from a parent. Your program saved my kid. Her fingers clenched the phone, pride a hammer strike. Thalia's final sketch, taped to the fridge, showed a town united, no shadows. Isolde's eyes locked on it, her resolve a steel blade. Their home, once a cage, was now a sanctuary, its walls painted with hope. The fight had forged a new future, and Isolde and Thalia stood tall, their laughter a vow that fear would never win again. That's our story, but it's not the end, the MC declares, voice sharp as a blade, eyes blazing like a torch. Isolde and Thalia's fight tore through lies, proving truth cuts deeper than fear. Your thoughts fuel this fire. Share them below. What hit you hardest? What would you do in Isolde's shoes? Your voice matters, sparking the next tale. We're grateful for your time, your heart, your fight. Stay fierce, and we'll meet again soon with another story to shake your soul.